about the hidden loyalties that we have, but also this inability to have the courage to make, to make those changes. Like, why are we bypassing this pain?
A couple of things here. So first of all, we need to look at loyalty. And so it takes a very courageous child to be happier than their own parents. It really takes a very courageous child to be happier than their own parents. And so I often ask my clients, how would it be for you to say, dear mother or dear father? And we use specific languaging in family constellation work, and we call those healing sentences. It's a particular way of speaking and making statements. So how would it be for you to say something like, dear mother or dear father, please bless me if I have the courage to be happier than you. Very often when people first say that sentence, what comes up for them is resistance. What comes up for them sometimes could be anger, could be grief, or guilt. Who am I to be happier than my own mother? Who am I to be happier or to have more than my own father? And so we often become very loyal to the suffering of the previous generations. So you can imagine the struggle it is for oppressed populations. And so we have many populations in the world that have been oppressed, that have suffered genocide or pogroms, or it's an ethnic minority, or some other minority that's been oppressed by the majority. When you're the child of somebody from one of those groups, how could we move beyond that suffering? And a lot of people do that through rejection. They try the game of rejection. So I'm going to reject my heritage, I'm going to reject my parents, I'm going to reject that story as a way of separating from that suffering. So the movement in family constellation work is to be able to meet that suffering head on and to really look at it with open eyes and to bow to it with deep respect. So there are lots of movements of respect, but in order to respect something, we must see it for what is. And so there are many individuals who are chasing the light and chasing the light and chasing the light, and often what they're looking for is a way to bypass their core pain. And their core pain is not only an individual pain, but it can also be a family pain, can be a generational pain, it can be a particular ethnic pain as well. So it can be collective as well as individual. And so in this work, I sometimes literally take my client by the hand, but I take my client by the hand and assist them at looking at that which is unbearable. And that which is unbearable can be an historical story, an event that's taken place within the family. Can be a child that died, can be an uncle who committed suicide, can be a mother who left and abandoned the family, it can be a war that took place, or it could be oppression, can be perpetrators as well, to look at the enemy, so to speak. So in family constellation work, we go to the heart of the matter, and we go to the heart of the discomfort as well. And so as I've said, we use many, many things to avoid discomfort. We're very discomfort averse. And so when I work with people individually, I guide them gently to the heart of the discomfort and to get comfortable with discomfort. So when I have students who are coming to learn from me, the first thing I teach them, or one of the first things I teach them, is around being comfortable with not knowing. Because not knowing also puts a lot of people into panic. And that's because as children, whether it's from parents or teachers or the other responsible adults around us, we're put under a lot of pressure to know, where are your shoes? Where's this? Where's that? And we have to take these tests and exams. So there's a lot of stress around not knowing, and that creates stress in the body. And so when someone is coming to learn aspects of family constellation work from me, or even when I'm working with an individual, one of the first steps is, let's get comfortable with not knowing. And that's a huge relief. Can you imagine always being comfortable with not knowing? And so that brings us to a place of peace. And so the first step to that is, okay, I don't know. That feels a little uncomfortable for me, or very uncomfortable for me. I'm now going to become comfortable with the discomfort. And so many of us are very discomfort averse. And so the whole of society is around avoiding discomfort. There are even spiritual teachings out there that tell you that the only thing that's important is that you feel good. And so there are a lot of feel-good therapies. I used to meditate a lot in the 1990s. And a lot of that meditation was a way of just simply disconnecting from a world that was overwhelming for me. And so a lot of spiritual practices and a lot of meditation can be used as a way to disconnect from the world. Now there is conscious disconnection. So once I've given a workshop, I need to disconnect from my work and come back to myself. So I normally need 24 hours either on my own, or I just want to be with very close friends. And so I don't check emails, I don't do anything work related, so I need to disconnect in that way. But I'm not disconnected from the world. And so one of the challenges with family constellation work, it presents us with that which is raw and that which is real. That which is raw and that which is real. And so we have to face life and death. And so in many constellations we're dealing with the death of a child, for example, or the early death of a parent. And so we're dealing with points of grief, points of loss that are very profound and very, very deep. And so for many people, that feels very, very threatening. Because literally, when we hit the deepest part of our wound, or the deepest part of our loss, quite literally, we often feel that we're going to die, that it's too overwhelming. But once we move through it the first time, we know that we're not going to die. However, something does die. And what does begin to die are all of the defenses that we have constructed around that pain in order to keep it hidden. So it could be a mask that we present to the world that dies. It could be a particular defense mechanism that we have that dies. And so the fear of death comes up because there's a part of what we've constructed that is in fear of its life, because it's about to be exposed for what it is. This is not a behavior, this is not a personality, this is not an aspect of you that is true to you, but is something that you have constructed in order to defend, conceal and hide this particular pain. And so Constellations is very raw and real, not in one of these extreme cathartic ways, although that can happen, but it's raw and real in terms of bringing what is and bringing the raw truth of something into full focus. And so you need an experienced facilitator in order to be able to guide your client through that, and in some cases literally to hold their hand as they're facing the unbearable.